Hello and welcome to Winning Saturday Night. How's everybody doing this evening? So happy you're here with us tonight. Tonight we're going to take a trip to the past and then bring it back to the future. You guys just can't believe the things that I found from way back in the day. It's going to be a good old time. But without hesitation, let me go ahead and bring in our guest tonight. And away we go.
And that's what we ought to be doing. The system that we have today is ripping off the middle class and the poor. Can you imagine how great a nation we'd have if we didn't have the Federal Reserve System printing all this money?
Ron Paul! Save our constitutional rights! Ron Paul! We're not gonna give up the fight! Ron Paul! Start a revolution! Break down, break down, break down, break! Ron Paul! Save our constitutional rights! Ron Paul! We're not gonna give up the fight! Ron Paul! Start a revolution! Break down the illegal institutions! Ron Paul!
All right. Welcome, Liberty Unleashed.
Oh, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a great introduction. That song always gives me goosebumps, man.
Doesn't it? It just takes you right back, doesn't it? It takes you right back to the day. Yeah, that was the hit song.
It
What's the hit
was,
one?
and the passion that it brought out, and everybody loved it, man. It was great.
Yeah, I know. I was making that. I was thinking about, when this hit, we were all feeling in stride. We were all feeling it like we're going somewhere with this. This is huge.
And it was really great. And it's amazing. I was just watching it again and thinking like everything he talks about, the footage that she shows, signs of liberty and talking about the Constitution and how that was a bad thing, that people were trying to get us to stop talking about this crazy thing like the Constitution and freedom.
Right. There was a big kind of like disconnect going on then that Ron Paul actually helped reconnect. And that's why he's so important. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, folks. A lot of that and then bringing it all into today. But I'm going to let Liberty Unleashed introduce himself here real quick. I just want to say hi to the crowd. Cool Gamer, thank you. How you doing? Welcome. Thanks for being here. Suzanne, welcome. Thanks for being here. Talking Trice and Tooth. As always, thank you so much for everything. And T-Rex Trucking. How you doing, my man? How you doing? Out in Missouri tonight. He's one of those guys that are out there keeping the supply chain going and just doing the hero's work as a trucker out
Excellent.
there. Yeah. He's my friend. We do a little show together sometimes called 18 Wheeling Across America, where I ride shotgun with him on a trip, and I just talk about the places and the sites and the people and all that fun stuff. So
that sounds pretty cool.
So Liberty Unleashed. You have quite a history, sir, and I'm just gonna go ahead and let you tell us all about it. But you go way back in the day, so let the crowd know what you're all about.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Daisy.
First of all, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, and of course, everybody out there who's listening that you just announced, and everybody else you didn't announce, we appreciate you tuning in here. My show is Liberty Unleashed, and you can find it over on YouTube as well. At Liberty Unleashed TV, I believe is the actual @ there. But it started back in the day, obviously in the early 2000s with the Ron Paul campaign coming out. And, we started, I think it started as Ron Paul Radio, then went to Revolution Broadcasting, and then to Restore the Republic Radio. But as it first started, I was with a co-host named Ray Powell, and we did the North Virginia Patriots show, which was interesting because everybody would always ask, are you guys from Virginia? And, if you're familiar with the Free State Project, which of course is in New Hampshire, we were both free staters. We didn't live in New Hampshire, but we signed up as the pledge to move there at some point as part of the pledge of the Free State Project. And what I'm getting at is New Hampshire was originally going to be called North Virginia. So that was our little spin on it. We called our show the North Virginia Patriots Show. And then it kind of evolved. Ray started doing other things, and Neil was on our show. Neil from V Radio was part of the North Virginia Patriots Show for a while. And then as Ray moved on from North Virginia Patriots Show, a friend of mine, Bill, came on, and we rebranded over to Liberty Unleashed. And I think that was about the time it changed over to Revolution Broadcasting. It's been so long, man. I can't remember the exact order of everything. But then, of course, like I said, it went to Restore the Republic Radio, and we stayed as Liberty Unleashed over there as well, podcasting under that name. And Ray and I, we were the founders of the Revolution March. So if anybody remembers that from the 2008-2009 era, the Revolution March on DC for Ron Paul, we were the ones who started that. And then in 2012, I was one of the organizers of Paul Festival down in Tampa, Florida. So that's everything I've done with the Ron Paul revolution and my involvement. Of course, there's been a lot of in between activism in there as well, but nothing, as major as the march and the festival. So yeah, that's me. My name is Brian, if I didn't say that.
Okay. Yeah. But people I don't understand this spans like 10, 15 years.
Yeah. I think, in 2000, was it 2004? Was that when Michael Bednarik was running? God, it's like it's been so long, but
Right?
I was still, I hate admitting this, but I was still a Republican voter back then. I was young, coming into it, I was early 20s. And so I was still Republican voter. and Ray started talking about the Libertarian Party and the Free State Project. And, I heard stuff and I was like, yeah, they kind of sound like a party I would like, but I never really kind of fully committed. I was still part of that duopoly, fighting against the Democrats because the Republican parties were, the party for limited government. Foolish me. But then, obviously it just started dawning on me as I got older and more mature that the Republican Party was saying one thing and then doing the other. And the problem with this country was both parties were really no different from each other. And I really started looking for change. And of course, that's, I found the Libertarian Party. And really, I found that through following the Free State Project. Everybody there seemed to be libertarian. So it was more like, what is this? And then my buddy Ray, he passed away recently, but back then he started talking, probably around 2007, I would say, about this guy named Ron Paul. And at first I'm like, oh, who are you talking about? Who's this guy, Ron Paul? And Ray was like, well, you got to watch this documentary. You got to watch this. And then, he sat me down and he made me watch Freedom to Fascism, the Aaron film. And Ron Paul
that was
in there.
Yeah, no, that movie, that one right there set off a lot of people, man. That was one of the first ones I watched too.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Ron Paul's in there and he's talking about the income tax and how we don't need it and getting rid of the IRS. And I'm like, this is my guy. I was like, this is exactly what I want to hear. And then I kept listening to things that Ron Paul was saying. I was like, oh my God, who is this guy? I like him. And as you would say, the rest is history, but we went down that rabbit hole. There was Money Masters. There was thinking about all those different documentaries. There was the Money Masters, which was about the Federal Reserve. Yeah. Then, of course, got the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, started reading that. Ayn Rand books came into play. I think the first one I read was her nonfiction, which was about capitalism. And ironic enough, Greenspan was the head of the Federal Reserve then. And of course, he was also in her book. Before he was the head of the Federal Reserve, he was talking free market stuff. So yeah, there was a lot of that. You got Freedom to Fascism, Money Masters, The Creature from Jekyll Island, and the rabbit hole just continued. And then Ron Paul's now out there giving all these speeches. Now he's a candidate, and he's doing these rallies and speeches, and you're just listening to this guy going, "Man, what an amazing person!"
Yeah, it was an exciting time with a lot of information coming out, and a lot of good information. The internet was a lot freer back then, but also the onset of the grifters as well, ones that would hijack things like that and try to spin people into these rabbit holes. We talk a lot about on this channel that kind of pull them down into this gully of conspiracy and out of the fight somewhat. But that's a topic for a little bit later in the show. But those movies did have a lot of impact. Freedom to Fascism went around like wildfire. Went around like wildfire. And it was really a catalyst for a lot of people in terms of opening their eyes about things. Aaron Russo did a great job with that, and had a lot of interesting points in it. I'm sure some of them could, maybe be debated, but the essence of what he was talking about was dead on.
Yeah, getting into trying to break it down and really, like you said, debate individual points as you can do. But I think what really helped that along is somebody famous was talking these words, doing this thing. It wasn't just necessarily a nobody like me or you off the street. This was somebody with a name in Hollywood, and he was doing the opposite of what Hollywood kind of stood for. He's out there talking about freedom and less government, where Hollywood seemed to be very would you say communist oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helped having somebody like Aaron Russo do it as opposed to just a person off the street.
Right. We started seeing more people start to speak this language and talk about these issues than we'd ever had before. It was very exciting to see that kind of like awareness rise up. It really felt like it was back in the cause and that it was going to lead to a lot more of it, which it did. I believe it did. We all know how it turned out, but I think a lot of people these days don't understand. That's why I still like to bring up and talk about Ron Paul and do special shows just about Ron Paul, because they don't understand how important this man was in terms of where we are today. like, you know, what he did back starting in well, he ran libertarian first a long time ago, right? But then he ran Republican twice. And it was really those runs as a Republican that got him the national notoriety and started the Ron Paul revolution, as it were.
Yeah. He spent, I think, 12 years as a congressman under the Republican Party. And, you know, I think what most people don't understand or try not to accept is that it's very hard to get, you know, elected as a libertarian. You know, his policies didn't change in his district, how he felt, how he voted, you know, for things or didn't vote, you know, depending on what it was in Congress. But if he would have ran in his district as a libertarian, he probably wouldn't have spent 12 years in Congress. I mean, that's just how it is. You know, when you look at his district and across the country, even today, the number of libertarian voters compared to a Republican or Democrat voter, it's just very slim. But because of Ron Paul, those numbers of libertarian voters have definitely increased. I mean, between the internet and Ron Paul, libertarianism has really gained a lot of traction that it didn't have in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I didn't even know what it was hardly until Ron Paul.
Exactly.
I was like, what is this? What, we have another party? There's another party somewhere?
Right. Yeah. You know, that's how I was too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I remember Ross Perot running as an independent, and that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought you were Republican, Democrat, or
Or
independent.
independent. Yeah.
You know? So, but yeah, Ron Paul comes onto the scene. You know, the internet, as we'll probably say 100 times on this show, really helped propel that and that information spread. You know, because he had newsletters, he was out there doing his thing. You know, he was part of Reagan's administration back in the 80s, so it wasn't like he didn't have some name and, you know, involvement in all this, but libertarians just were not taken serious in that era.
Yeah, but that's when the idea of the Liberty faction, I think, evolved, right? The Liberty faction of the Republican Party, because it does fit, and really what the Libertarian Party is a breakaway from the Republican Party in a sense of what it should stand for, right? Of course, when the neocons were in charge, it didn't stand for anything like that. It was very confusing.
Yeah, and you know, if people really think back and remember, particularly when George Bush, his first term, when he was running for president for his first term, he spoke a lot about limited government and less taxes and the need not to have the IRS. He really sounded like what you thought the Republican Party was, like this limited government party. But like you said, I mean, he was a neocon, and I mean, he was saying one thing and then got into office and it completely changed. And, you know, I thought when I was growing up, when I was young, that's how it was presented. Like, you know, Democrats were like the party of Hollywood and the Republicans were those for limited government. So to me, you know, somebody who hates authority, that seemed like the best place to be was the Republican Party. I didn't really know about the Libertarian Party. And it took a while. You know, I was in my probably around 24 years old when when all this really started to catch on, when Ron Paul came onto the scene and I started to change over and really start following the Libertarian Party. And I've been amazed, and I still am to this day, that in America, you know, this country that speaks about freedom and democracy the way they talk, and the Libertarian Party is the small party. It's not the big party. That it's the party that gets mocked, and not the party that raises millions of dollars and puts up all these awesome candidates. It shocks me to this day because, you know, you think America, you think freedom, you think libertarianism. It's just, it seems like it all should go together. You know, one big happy family there.
Yeah, you would think so. But again, you know, people, that's when you start to come into the realizations, right? So if you get on this path, you start to learn a lot along the ways about things that you think are one way, and then you find out that they're another. That the false left right paradigm that Ron Paul talked about and others talked about back in the day, that Trump basically busted up. I mean, this is why I talk about the strategy came in to have like a liberty faction within the Republican Party to put it back to where it was supposed to go, to kind of reform it, right? With these liberty-minded, libertarian-based kind of like representatives, right? They were
the Tea Party.
Well, there you go. Like, the Tea Party was supposed to be that, right? We all know what went down with that. But actually, I do have I'm looking for it right now. I do have a video from back in the day where Ron Paul kind of talks about how, here we go. Here it is. Yeah. we'll watch this. I will watch half of this because a lot of my videos from back in the day are like 4 to 8 minutes. So this is literally coming off my hard drive. I found all my old Ron Paul videos from back in the day on an old hard drive. I'm like, wow, that's how I found the Amy Allen intro there we did with the Ron Paul Revolution song. So I have all my old stuff. I actually saved it back then because we thought they'd take the internet down eventually. And we would have hey, we were prepared. And this is what I always tell people on my channel. I was like, you got to put yourself back in the mindset of the day. And we're going to do our best to put you back in the mindset of the day tonight, right? We're going to show you things you probably have never seen before, back how it felt. What were the issues of the day, like the TSA and other things like that, right? Things we don't even talk about right now.
Right.
But they were big deals back then. And we were on, we're coming up to 2012. Think about it. We had I keep saying this all the time. Think about it. We had, we thought the world was going to come to an end in 2012. A lot of people did, the planet Nibiru.
The dollar wasn't supposed to exist anymore. This was supposed to already be gone.
Dollar's supposed to be gone. We got all kinds of, we felt like the with the Obama administration that they were really just accelerating us to collapse. We had the Obamacare, we had the the bailouts, we had all these things going on. But really the police state was a big deal, right? God, every day you turn on it's something about the police state, right? It's like we found coffins in Georgia, we found the FEMA camps, we found these all that stuff was hitting all the time. And like when it hit, people would go out and make documentaries about it. Those documentaries would hit, right? So there'd be talking points throughout. Let me pull this up here about the Tea Party. Now, the Tea Party was this first attempt, right? But as we see, and as we saw with the Trump, with MAGA, right? They put agitators in the crowd, and then they try to infiltrate it with posers, right? Tea Party was. Let's see. I have to do the whole window here. I think I do. The Tea Party was the way they did that. I'll just do media player like that. I might not have sound. Let me just do this. I'm gonna do it like this tonight. All right, I'll do that. I'll just do this. Hold on a second. Give me 1 second. I don't know why my taskbar isn't hiding. No?
Yeah, the FEMA camps. That was a big thing.
Right? Remember that?
Yep.
Hold on a second. I don't understand why this thing isn't disappearing.
Liberty Unleashed broke it. That's what happens when we get on people's show. We break things.
Is there another way to present
talking freedom?
Yeah, man. We'll get it. We'll get it. That's a window and this is a tab. I just don't like the look of having the taskbar at the bottom when you're streaming. But it's supposed to hide it, and it's not hiding it. I don't know why. Oh, here we go. I got it now. All good, guys. It's gonna be fine. There we go. All right, here we go. Remember this guy?
The judge.
The judge, yeah. Back in the day.
I think we need volume, man.
Can you hear it?
Nope.
You can't hear it? Crowd, can you hear it? Somebody out there let me know.
No sound, Gary.
Oh, thanks, Gary. How you doing, man? Okay.
We get on your show and release all this liberty, and it's broken.
I gotta think about why I can hear it and no one else can. It's gotta be this. See, I'm not doing it from normal Chrome tabs. I'm doing it from a media player. Let me see. My audio. Oh, I see. I would have to reroute some things here. All right, let's chat for a minute and we get this fixed up. Anyways, the Tea Party itself is what they did is they put agitators into the crowd. They had them carrying Confederate flags. They had them starting fights. They had them, what are some of the things you saw? I just remember the fight starting and the rhetoric. So they would put these guys out there like they do so many times, probably Fed involved, but probably more party involved.
Yeah, really depend what was going on, as we get
Yeah.
into it and talk about like Paul Festival. Man, we got infiltrated from every angle. I mean, it was amazing what we had to deal with over there in the infiltration. Each rally, each era kind of had its different infiltrators. A lot of times it was the Fed in there. The RNC itself would put people in some of this. They did not like the neocon wing, did not like the Tea Party at all. So
right,
the John McCains of the world were definitely not happy about the Tea Party candidates and anybody that supported that. So yeah, there was a lot of infiltration going on for sure.
Yeah, and then they went straight in and just started joining the Tea Party, and that's when it turned. Anything to create the worst optics for the cause, right?
Yeah.
So they do it on the ground, then they would replay that same clip over and over again. These alt-right, these high, what we talked about before the show, we talked about these isolationists, these radical conspiracy-minded people or whatever. That wasn't even a big, that wasn't as big of a blemish back then, but it became one really fast. And then it's just the violent, right? So I remember somebody seeing it and saying, "Oh, I saw that stuff. I'd never be part of that." And then they closed their mind right off. It worked so much better back then too. They were better at closing minds off, I think, than they are these days.
Yeah, I think people definitely are waking up more these days. The music that's out there. When you see that guy Oliver Anthony who just did the Richmond north of Richmond video, and you see how many people that resonated with. I mean, that's amazing. I think if that song would have came out back in the day when we did it, it would not have had the amount of views that it got today. So, it's a good song, but I think the message is really what carried that, and that many people really feel it in their hearts.
We'll try this one more time. Tell me if you can hear it.
Defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government
you hear it?
that stays within the confines of the Constitution. Is the Tea Party movement being taken over by neoconservatives? If you recall, the movement originally began as a grassroots revolution in support of Congressman Ron Paul and his ideas about constitutional government not too long ago in 2007. Since then, and more recently, the Tea Party movement has taken on a life of its own. It is still a populist uprising against the establishment. But now certain political parties are attempting to control it, to benefit themselves and their candidates, and to use it as a tool against their opponents. Congressman Paul is not happy by some in the Tea Party movement and some Tea Party Republicans he's facing in his own upcoming election. He's also unhappy with the latest from the Federal Reserve. Who wouldn't be? Are you ready for this? Should the central bank be bailing out Greece? Isn't that a matter for Congress to decide? Doesn't that affect foreign policy? Joining me now on the phone is one of the great defenders of freedom and constitutional government in Congress today, Congressman Ron Paul from Texas. Congressman Paul.
So yeah, bailouts were a big deal. And hey, Brian, anytime you want me to stop, just let me know. Just say pause, and I'll pause as soon as I can.
Yeah.
Hey, Scott Baker, how you doing? That was the bailouts. We talked about how money was being spent. People didn't used to talk about stuff like that much, but they were very concerned with that and other things. Here's a Ron Paul part of it. And
I don't think people knew what quantitative easing was until Ron Paul started really making his rounds about the Federal Reserve. I definitely did.
Yeah, he inspired a lot of people to learn about money and to learn about how the monetary policy of our country works. Remember, he'd always talk about monetary policy. Because all these kids want to talk about monetary policy. I can't believe it.
It's a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Thank you, Judge. Good to be with you.
Let's start with the Tea Party movement. You and I have spoken to them. I have spoken to them many times in your home state. The feeling and reception.
Uh-oh.
intended to mean when written and still should mean today. Is something going on with these folks that we should know about?
Well, I think it's not too strange. It's a powerful movement. There's a lot of people involved, and most of them are really disgusted with Washington, and I think they have a healthy disgust for what's happening, and they basically agree that we need less government and more freedom. But when a political party senses that there's a movement outside the party, they want to get control of it or in front of it or capture it. And if they would come to the meetings and try to join and accept the complaints that the people that have joined the Tea Party movement, that is one thing. But if they come with the idea that, oh, well, we want you to bend a little bit and become, say, more Republican, you have to be more conventional, you shouldn't be so hardcore, you shouldn't be against these wars, and, you should be in favor of torture and even assassination in order to be part of it, I see that as an infiltration of ideas. But I still think the people involved are basically there for the right reason, and I think they're sorting out what they believe in, and I hope you and I can continue to help influence them into thinking what is right and just and why freedom works, rather than saying that we have to slip back in the old ways and accept the old-fashioned ideas that have been failing this country for so long.
Well, I agree with you, and as you know, because you and I have discussed this, I have walked out among the people at these gatherings. The biggest one to which I spoke was in Fort Worth, Texas, to 25,000 people. And they asked profound questions about the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And when I explained to them things that were done in the Bush administration, a lot of these people are former Republicans who had no idea about torture, about warrantless wiretapping, about FBI agents writing their own search warrants, about these utter perversions of the Constitution. Well, what do we need to do to make sure that those
Issues
who
of the
believe
day.
in torture and believe in offensive war as a means of foreign policy and really believe in their version of big government don't co-opt this movement?
Well, I guess one day at a time and one mind at a time, and you certainly reach a lot of people with sound thinking on these issues. So I think it's a battle of ideas. It's ideological. I don't think it is a partisan issue at all. But you're right. A lot of the people haven't thought these things through. But you know what? I have found it a little bit easier, especially because I'm in a conservative district in Texas, and a lot of people still, have respect for and like George Bush. But right now, if I complain about the foreign policy, oh, that's Obama's fault. They are frequently driven by partisan politics. But I think they're more open for the old right position, the conservative position, that there's no reason in the world why conservatives can't believe in civil liberties, and why, it used to be the Robert Taft people, the old right Republicans who were the great opponents to war, and now it's been shifted where the Republicans are identified more with war, but it looks like both parties are war parties, is the way I see it.
I would defy anybody to point out to me any significant difference between the Obama foreign policy and the Bush foreign policies, basically doing the same thing. They just have a different tone, use different words, and have different public attitudes about it. 57 drones to assassinate people in Pakistan, 150,000 troops on the ground in Afghanistan, defending secret trials, defending the state secrets doctrine, defending keeping people in jails in Guantanamo Bay, and even in the United States without charging them with a crime. I don't really see any difference at all.
It's sort of strange. When Republicans get in office, we're supposed to be the conservatives and cut spending. And it seems like our guard is let down, and they get away with more spending. But then when the Democrats get in and they claim they're going to cut back on the war and some of this militarism, they actually do more of it. I don't think he's backed off at all. So this is why I've more or less come to the conclusion that at the upper levels, there's not a significant difference between, the two parties. But I think this is why there's a Tea Party group out there. I think they're recognizing this, and they're sick and tired of it. Both are spending too much money, and both, promote the big government programs.
Right. I agree with you.
It's God, that is such a blast from the past to listen to and watch, for sure. And so true. I mean, when you talk about the Democrat, the way I see it, when it comes to war, If a Republican's in and starts a war, then every Democrat tries to use that against them. If a Democrat's in and starts a war, every Republican is now anti-war and tries to use that against the Democrat. At the end of the day, they both like war. They just prefer their party to be in power when it happens, for sure.
Mhm.
Back
maybe,
then,
maybe Scott. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Yeah. What was I going to say? I wanted to get that chat in there because I thought that was good. I forgot what I was going to add. I had a good. I should have waited and said it and then gone to the comment.
Right. We talk about back then, we obviously had the Patriot Act and the Department of Homeland Security, and then they came out with domestic terrorism. They started talking about domestic terrorism. And anybody who was back in that day, if you remember, Ron Paul supporters were labeled as domestic terrorists. And again,
right.
You're talking about people who just believed in the Constitution. That's all. That's what got us labeled as that. And after the Revolution March, one of the organizers that worked with us and we became friends, Catherine Bleich, she went out and really got involved in activism and started a organization called Operation Defuse. And remember the fusion centers that were out there to help tackle domestic terrorism? Well, if most people don't remember this, the MIAC report, this was Michigan report that came out and literally named Ron Paul in it and his supporters and said, if you're driving, like to state troopers, if you're driving down the highway and you see somebody with the bumper sticker that says Ron Paul or supports the Constitution or is for the Second Amendment, they are possibly domestic terrorists and you need to pull them over and interrogate them. This was a report that went around to law enforcement in Michigan. And Catherine and her group exposed it. They ended up having to apologize to Ron Paul. I mean, he's a candidate in Congress and they're basically calling him a domestic terrorist. And but it's still to this day fascinates me that all of a sudden supporting the Constitution, the document of our country, the one that we teach kids in school, is like, the beacon of freedom here. And now you're a domestic terrorist if you support it all of a sudden. It was wild.
Yeah, it was. I wanted to ask you, is there such thing as an anti-war party now? I mean, back in the day when Ron Paul ran, that was a big deal. We're like, no, he's the anti-war Republican. He's the freedom Republican. He's way different than anything you've ever been exposed to in a lifetime of the false left right paradigm, where these neocons have been playing the heels, the fake, the faking it basically, just to make the whole party look bad, and be the bad guys, right? They're the ones with the bail, they're just for rich people. They don't like poor people. They're going to do all these bad things to poor people. They're the warmongers. They're the war hawks, all that. But really, it was both sides continuing the policy, just handing it off back and forth, like this nice little arrangement to keep the illusion going, the illusion of choice, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we know the Libertarian Party would be the anti-war party. In fact, their latest campaign right now to try to raise money and get support is, Operation End the War Hawks or Against the War Hawks or something. And I admire them and I support them for wanting to go after that. But I think that's like a tough campaign to run because, there was the anti-war rally that happened, I believe, was it early this year or late last year? And just like everything else, infiltrated. They did everything they could to make it look like this pro-Russian, pro-Nazi rally rather than what it was. And again, we're here in America, the land of the free, and we're trying to infiltrate groups that are trying to look out for what we consider the best interest of America, which is not get involved in all these wars and policing the world, as Ron Paul always said. And you're the fringe, you're the crazy one if you believe in that. If you don't believe that America should be out policing the world and spreading democracy everywhere, then, you're the weirdo. And it's amazing because the voters and the people forget. I mean, our spreading of democracy is what created the Taliban. It's what created ISIS. And we keep creating all these problems by policing the world. And I guess everybody thinks that we just have to police more and that will go away.
Hold on a second. Guys, can you find are we still on YouTube? I don't know what's going on my end, but I'm not seeing the video. It's saying video unavailable. Are we still on?
Yeah, we're
What the heck?
so far we're showing over on my channel. We're still
What
on.
the heck is going on my side then? It's weird. Did we not put the right link out in no, it's showing the right link too. It's weird. I click on the link, try to go over the channel, and it says video unavailable.
Yeah, I'm showing it
View
over
in
on Twitter
studio.
too. So
Wow.
Yeah.
This is really strange. Let me see what it says.
hopefully the
Review
chat
not available.
response lets us know. I assume they're listening.
Okay, I'm just gonna pretend like nothing's happening on my end. It's really strange. All right, cool. As long as you
We
guys
can
can see us and we're
infiltrate.
doing good, that's all that matters. And thank you for the 10 memberships. Talking Trash and Truths, Just Joy, Danielle, GS Crippler, Bella Tor, Sinnex, Ashley One, Texas Jen, Megan K, Excited Utterance, and Muffin Radio. Oh, and Madcore. Welcome to the winner circle, and welcome back to the winner circle for some of you. Happy to have you here. Thank you. Thanks again, T3. Okay, this is just really strange to me. That I'm not gonna let it distract me though. So let's keep moving forward. So I guess as far as ending abruptly wars, I guess the Libertarian Party would have that. Now, speaking of which, we I ran into a person back in 2006, 2007 or so, and I was talking about this stuff, right? And they're like, well, what do you, I said, I don't know that the Libertarian Party could ever do anything though. Like, I don't feel like they're going to be held down, held back, outnumbered, ganged up on. They'll never get that third party foothold they need to have three parties going, which would be great and all. Of course you worry about other things too, but they said, well, what do you think about like us going in through the Republican Party?
Well,
And
I
was
mean,
like, that became kind of the thing, right? And this is why the reason I bring it up is like back then, right? Gary Johnson ran same time, said he'd love to run with Ron Paul, all that stuff, right? Made a good presentation that time. But the thing is that they felt like that was the way to do it, and then it became an idea of, oh yeah, well, he does really represent what the ideals of the party were supposed to be, right? And he does have this anti-war stance. It would be the perfect antithesis to go out and run against the neocons and try to get a foothold that way, right? Because he made no qualms about the fact that he was libertarian on many issues, right? He didn't say every issue, but many issues. There are different parts of the Libertarian Party that are interesting. There's the very hardcore part of it. Like, they wouldn't even like comb their hair a different way if it wasn't in the Constitution, right?
right.
But they don't recognize strategy. They recognize by the book kind of like mentality.
And Neil and I dealt with that actually recently when we interviewed GOP down in Colorado when they made that deal with the LP. We interviewed the chairman of both parties, the GOP of Colorado and the LP. And I thought it was a great interview, and I thought the strategy was sound. The amount of what I call purist libertarians from the party that came out against it, they didn't care. They thought, we used examples like, if a Ron Paul candidate was running in a district and was running as a Republican, would you still want the Libertarian Party to put a candidate up against them? And they were like, absolutely. That's the job of the party. I was like, well, isn't that counterproductive? Doesn't that waste money? I mean, when you go into a district, particularly where the Republicans have a stronghold, or the Democrats, but in this case, the Republicans, and you already have a Liberty candidate running, why would you try to waste a Libertarian's resources getting another Liberty candidate in there, one that's going to lose? It didn't make sense. So, as you said, these purists, there's this part of the Libertarian Party that everything has to be Libertarian Party or else.
Right. They seem to just not understand that the system's corrupt and that this is my point right now. Like, you can say party this, party that, third parties, right? I think the only two parties there are is the establishment and anti-establishment. There's the establishment versus the rest of us. I've been saying this for a long time. Ask anybody. They've heard it a bunch on this channel. But yeah, that's where I stand. I'm anti-establishment. I'm an independent constitutionalist who's anti-establishment. Period. And until I don't need to be, that's the only thing I can be, because we can talk about ideologies. We can talk about what the best ideology is, what the best policies are. Doesn't mean shit in a corrupt system. Doesn't mean shit, because they'll just go around it. They'll just loophole through it. They'll just wax over it. You know, they have the corruption on their hands. They can do whatever they want to with the power, right? They don't play by the rules. They never have.
I agree. And, I remember the old signs that people would hold up that Ron Paul cured my apathy.
Yep. I have one of those videos.
Yeah, we need a lot more of that, because that's really the problem. In individual conversation, the people around me, friends, family, anybody I talk to about politics, they're a lot more libertarian than they vote. They tend to go back. You can talk about whether it be the war on drugs. You find many people who agree and understand that it's been a complete failure. Both sides, Republicans and Democrats I talk to, will sit there and be like, yeah, it's stupid, the war on drugs. But the minute you get a candidate like Ron Paul that says you have to end it, they're like, whoa, you know how many people you'll put out of jobs? And it's like, what? Where did you just come with that?
Right. So
people tend to, they talk more libertarian than they are, and then run back to their party the minute elections happen. It's amazing. And it's scary, because they all continue to play this, well, I voted for this guy because it's still better than having that guy. Meaning, if I'm a Democrat, I voted for the Biden or Obama because it's better than having McCain or Romney. And, the same thing, like you talk to Republicans and you're like, John McCain is not a Republican. John McCain, doesn't deserve a Republican's vote. And they're like, well, it's still better than having a Democrat. And I'm like, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
They don't get it. And so I think there's a high level of apathy that sits there. And, for those of us where Ron Paul cured our apathy, that's great. It's just, we wish we could cure a lot more of that.
Here you go. Here's this video right here. We talk about war. Now, Bill, we just did neocon here. Hey, Caitlin, how you doing? Welcome. We just did, and hey, K1, how you doing? Kawan, do you think the Trump National Day is hard with Maggie? Can't get influenced by the Libertarian Party. More win next year a lot locally. I don't want to win every week. I don't want to win every week. I'm trying to understand that. I know there's a language barrier here. I'm trying to understand that. I'll try to think about that. Hey, Senator Eric Brakey, how you doing? Welcome. I hope I said that right. Brakey? I'm not familiar with which state you might be with there, Senator, but feel free to let me know. Okay, so here's what you guys remember on this channel. We did the neocon speech, right? So you guys know who the neocons of the day were and what the neocons are about. Educated my audience on this. If you haven't seen it, the video is still out there. I think it's on Unveiling Reality, which is a Wednesday night show. You can still find it. We watched the entire speech. It's epic. Okay, it's one of the most classic speeches ever, right? Would you agree with me on that one?
Yes.
Yeah. So I pointed out in there who are the neocons. Well, Bill Kristol is the anointed, heir to the neocon empire, I guess, if you will. But here's a video from back in the day that just shows you about how the parties were aligned in terms of peace versus war.
Then are you influenced when the president comes and basically wants? I mean, it's a huge compliment when the leader of the free world comes to you for help, right?
The free world.
He didn't come to me for help, of course. He wouldn't acknowledge that. He came to me to make sure that I was supporting his sound policies. Of course, since his sound policies are now more like the policies people like me have been advocating for quite a while, I'm happy to support them. He's a born-again neocon.
It's
Wait,
true.
so you're saying you're a socialist? Bill, I hardly knew ye.
But it's true. I mean, I said this before. We've got the drones. We've got military tribunals. We've got Gitmo. We're bombing Libya. People who voted for Obama got 4 more years of Bush.
Yeah, what's the joke? They told me if I voted for McCain, we'd be going to war in a third Muslim country.
Yeah.
I voted for McCain, and we're doing it.
There you go. There you go.
How about that, huh?
Yep.
State Senator for Maine. How you doing, sir? A friend just sent me this link. What do we talk about? The Ron Paul strategy since 2012. Yeah. Well, basically, back in the day, Liberty Unleashed here did Ron Paul Radio along with other major events, coordinated a lot back in the day. I had a group called the Ron Party, and we were like the online advocacy and protection squad from Ron Paul. We protected his reputation, his name. We protected his and his supporters from falling into conspiracy theories and things that would discredit them and pull them off the path we were on. So we both were doing different things in the Ron Paul revolution in different places. We didn't know each other back then. In fact, this is the first time we've met. We met through V Radio. And if you have a link, sir, see, I could look you up and potentially add you to the show if you'd like to come on and talk about it. Are you in the part of the Ron Paul revolution yourself? Are you influenced by Ron Paul? Do you have it seems like if you're here, you must like him. So I'm guessing that you.
I was wondering if he spoke at Pork Fest recently, because when I saw the name and Googled him, it looked and sounded familiar, and I'm wondering if he was at Pork Fest recently, but I don't know. There's a lot of people out there. Yeah, Bill Crystal.
Yeah, and Ron Paul strategy since 2012. Absolutely, this is what we're talking about in terms of the anti-establishment movement or liberty faction, whatever you want to call it. That's been moving against the establishment to bring back liberty, constitutionality in our government. Hopefully, eliminating the corruption that keeps us from actually having a functioning system. And that's what we work on this channel here, and that's what we're talking about as far as the Ron Paul revolution goes, because our goals, and I'm just going to get to this. Okay, cool. I was the main state director for Ron Paul in 2012. Well, awesome, dude. How can I reach you? Would you like to come on the show?
Yeah, maybe that's how I remember his name. Yep.
Got kicked out of it.
Hey, if you're for Ron Paul, that could happen.
Yeah, back in the day, I'm sure. Yeah, we were actually talking about that earlier too, about how the RNC was just saying they were voting for stuff on the floor, but then they would just pass it whether the crowd liked it or not.
There was two vetting processes going on back in the day. If you wanted to know who Ron Paul, if it was a true Ron Paul supporter, you asked about the Federal Reserve. If you were a Democrat or a Republican and you wanted to know if they were going to vote the way the Republican Party is, you asked how they felt about Ron Paul. Those were the two vetting processes back in the day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they pull all kinds of dirty tricks. And that's why, like, I'm just like, this go around, my attitude is, and it's strategic, of course, but it's also like, we just have to hang on to the GOP. We can't let it fall back into their hands. I feel like if we let it fall back into neocon hands in any way, shape, or form, the establishment, they're just going to lock it down. They're going to lock the door and throw away the key. Like, we'll never be able to get another guy like Ron Paul or Trump or anybody like that goes against the establishment in there. If that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough. It still is tough. I mean, when you really look at Congress right now, you've got what? Rand Paul, Massey, maybe Lauren Boebert. I mean, maybe her. And am I missing somebody else in the Republican Party right now who you can say is pro-freedom? And I say maybe with Lauren. I know she's really strong on the Second Amendment, which is a big deal to me. I'm very much about the Second Amendment. But yeah, when you look right now inside Congress and at the Republican Party, you don't have a lot of names going on in there that are truly part of the freedom movement.
Cool. Hey, Liberty, this is I invited you on the show, sir. I do have a policy. I always ask my guests if we're going to bring somebody on, if they would care to add them. But you cool with Senator Eric Brakey coming on?
Sure.
Brakey, I gotta get that right. Okay, so how can I reach you, sir? T3, that's Talking Trash and Truth. She's my mod. She can get you a link to the show. I don't know if you have a Discord or a way to contact. I don't want to really throw out the StreamYard links in the live chat just for obvious reasons, but right. I'd love to get it over to you. Let me coordinate with her. She's in my ear, so let me see. I'm gonna throw you this link, T3. I'm gonna send it to you. It's in the comments there in our room, our special room. There you go. Okay, so if you could help the senator, the fight is happening in state capitals. Let's talk about it, man, because I'm really interested in the strategy going forward. Like, And Congress is a distraction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the fight's
Big
happening on
capitals.
all levels. I mean, obviously, the Libertarian Party is trying to take more local levels where they can win, and mayor runs, city council, places like that. And then, of course, you're working up the line there. The freedom candidates that have been out there since the Ron Paul days have definitely been trying to do it on state levels for sure. And I think there's probably a lot more. I don't, all the states out there, I don't follow them. But yeah, Congress is definitely a distraction for sure. I would agree with that.
Do you have an email address we can send you the link to? Just T3 will reach out to you. Let's talk and try some truth. So we'll reach out to you and so get you all squared away. So just if you guys can coordinate, and we'll try to get you, do our best to get you on. All right. So yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. It's like I felt like at the time the strategy was to get the neocons out of power because that's what fundamentally held up the there you go. Fundamentally held up the left-right, the false left-right paradigm, which everybody was born into and was believing from day one. And this is what I stress on my channel. This is generational warfare. Like honestly, generational warfare. So they're always going after the youngest generation one way or another. Well, you're born into this narrative where Democrat good, Republican bad, right? And you hear that your whole life, all through school, all through the mainstream media, so on and so forth. But why do you like these guys just want to go to war and kill people? They're just greedy millionaires and they don't care about people that are hurting or suffering. That's the narrative you're growing up with in the establishment narrative. Right?
And Gen Z right now is supposedly going after the Republican Party because their support for the Second Amendment, and which means, according to Gen Z, what they're being told is that means they hate children. If you support the Second Amendment, apparently you hate children now. So that's
as they're having their identities wrecked and from as they're attacking their identities day in and day out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's been, when you talk about 2008 and 2012, the infiltration, the different changes, we didn't, in 2008, when we did the Revolution March, we didn't really deal with infiltration because nobody really took Ron Paul serious at that point when we started the rally and the planning for the rally. So it went rather well. By 2012, when we did Paul Festival, it was everywhere. The infiltration was from every level, from every angle. And I mean, they just did not want to see any big rally or big festival for Ron Paul be successful. And again, as we talk about it, you look at any other freedom candidates and how they've been infiltrated, how it's been hard for them to gain traction at any level beyond probably a local level like a mayor or something like that. It's fascinating because, again, you're supposed to think of America as this beacon of freedom, this, let freedom ring. And anybody who tries to gets beat down by the establishment as quick as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we kind of got in that earlier. Like, what would have happened if Ron Paul actually got the nomination? Like, I think that they revealed their cards as they go along, right? We see what happens when you get a serious candidate, right? They do debate mobbing, right? They throw a bunch of neocons out on a stage to mob up and steal time away from that candidate at first, right? And if you're not Trump, that usually works. Vivek did a good job the other night. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but for the most part, they were going back to Pence, they were going back to Christie, they were going back to the same people over and over again. And they would not complete the questions to everybody, which was kind of annoying.
And I think that's one of the things that bothers me about the American voters, either party. Again, it's back to, there's no way Biden really won his party. Bernie Sanders was much more popular and deserved to come out of the primaries. And as soon as the primary started, I said, Biden's going to get the nomination. That's their guy, of course. But, we watched the RNC cheat Ron Paul and do what they did to his supporters. We watched what the DNC did to Bernie Sanders and his supporters. And yet not me and you, not the Ron Paul supporters, but the voters out there that support these parties, they turn a blind eye to it because they still want to fight against the other party. So they're like, well, I know they snubbed Bernie, but I'd still rather Biden than Trump, and so they let them get away with it. And we have the same thing when it comes to third party. You know, right now, all over the news, they're already starting that mantra. Well, this election is too important to vote third party. Happens every election. And, you know, it's amazing when you talk to people out there. They're like, well, I like the libertarian candidate, but I don't want to vote for a loser. I want to make sure my vote goes to a winner type mentality that they've got the people programmed to believe in. And rather than people standing up and demanding that these, you know, third parties get on the debate stage, that each candidate in a debate gets equal time, we don't. You know, we watch these debates, we see that they give one candidate more time than the other. I mean, geez, back then, Hillary, when she was running in the primaries, she got how much time compared to every other candidate? I mean, even when she was up against Donald Trump, she got more time than him. And people turn a blind eye rather than demanding equality in those areas, because again, you either love them or hate them. So if you hate them, then of course you're going to turn a blind eye and say, well, you know, I'm glad that Hillary got more time. If you love them, you're going to complain about it. But if it was the opposite, then you'd be like, well, I'm glad Hillary didn't get enough time. Those kind of things. So, you know, we tend to treat politics as like our favorite sports team, our favorite football team or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, I know the ref made a bad call, but it's in our favor, so it's okay.
Yep. Real quick. Welcome to the show for the very first time and very first senator, Senator Eric Brakey. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I don't know what I stumbled onto exactly, but an old friend of mine from the Ron Paul movement in 2012 just sent this link over to me and said, "Hey, all right, I'll see what you guys are talking about."
Awesome. So are you currently a senator, or are you still or is that like something that you were formerly?
Yeah, no, I'm serving my third term in the Maine State Senate. Though I was out for a couple of years, I got a lot after being the state director for Ron in Maine in 2012. I ran for state Senate 2 years later, 2014, beat a Democrat incumbent, served 4 years, got a number of liberty policies done, including things like constitutional carry, then left in 18, ran for the U.S. Senate, was the Republican nominee against Senator Angus King, made a run at Congress 2 years later, and then realized that the important fight was always in the states to begin with. So that's where I went back in, and I'm serving in my state Senate right now.
Awesome, man. Well, welcome, and man, this is great. A bunch of people who were all fighting for liberty around the same time in different ways, right here together. This is what liberty does. It brings people together, right?
Yeah, the revolution continues. It's, you know, everyone's been, well, you know, we've lost a couple of people along the way, but, you know, I know so many folks to this day who are still fighting that revolution. Just, we've all got our different ways to do it. Ron Paul never said, this is the one way to do it. He said, you guys go figure it out. You're smart enough and you know what liberty's about. We were taught well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he did. And it was very important what he did was rekindling the spark of liberty, reteaching the philosophy of liberty to a whole new generation. Like he knew it. He really knew what he was doing and used his time well.
Yeah. I think it's a, you know, I think his example is a great model that there are so many different ways to win, right? We're on the White House, but he won. When I look at like when I think of all the people on the Republican debate stage in like 2012, you know, Mitt Romney got the nomination, but he didn't get to become president either. And I guarantee you in 100 years time, like Ron Paul's name is going to be in history books while Mitt Romney is going to be an asterisk somewhere.
Yeah,
that would be great.
It would.
Did you find on the state level, do you have a lot more support there? You know, other liberty candidates there? Do you stand alone? What's it like for you over there? Do you got a bunch of Republicans who are still neocons, or do you have some good liberty candidates in there?
Well, for the most part, I'm pretty alone in the Maine Senate as far as being like a liberty guy. I mean, there's only 35 state senators in the state, and there'll be a lot of votes. Like I was sponsoring Defend the Guard legislation, for example, to call our National Guardsmen home from wars that Congress haven't declared. And that vote was 34-1. So on some of the like the real hardcore liberty things, I'm very much alone there. But by and large, in the big picture, it's much. We're much better in the state legislature we were, say, even, you know, half a decade ago. you know, my first run through the Maine Senate over 2 terms, like I was having a lot of success like working with like Tea Party people, but as far as like hardcore Ron Paul people, they were very few and far between, not just in Maine but across the country. You could probably total them up on like counting on 2 hands if you could count to 10. But now like it really, there's been like concentrated effort. I think because of the failures that we saw, like with Rand Paul's presidential campaign failing to get off the ground the way that we hoped, the way that we have failed since, I mean, we haven't gotten like, it's hard to point to like a real pure Ron Paul liberty person that we've got elected to Congress, Massey, in like 2012. It's been like a decade since we've gotten like a real pure person there. There's been like a shift in looking at where we've gotten victories has been in the state legislatures. You know, you have people like real great liberty legislator Nick Freitas in Virginia, myself in Maine, and folks kind of were showing that there's a model here that that the liberty movement can use, because while we will always be at a competitive disadvantage when we're going for these federal seats, because I've tried it twice, and I'll tell you, like, things can look great. Like I was the front runner in my race for Congress, like through the whole thing until COVID hit and Kevin McCarthy final like the final like month, and dropped like $500,000 on me. Like they're the establishment. They can just drop money out of thin air. Because they're the ones who are handing it out, right? They're the ones handing it out to the special interests and getting things laundered back to them. So we're always going to be at a competitive disadvantage in these federal races when they're going to always have the money advantage, but advantage in these more local races because we have the people, we have the grassroots. They can stop one person, you know, running for Congress, but there are thousands of state legislative seats across this country. And all we need to do is get Liberty people to run for them. And if you look at the work that like Young Americans for Liberty has been doing on state legislative races, they've got over 300 Liberty legislators elected in state capitals across the country now. And their goal is to get to 1,000 by the end of the decade, which, considering when I was there last, we had maybe 12. To go from 12 to 300 in just a few years' time, you know, is... you know, I'm not going to say that every single person there is like an A+ Ron Paul, but everyone there is A+ or higher.
That's good.
So there's good things happening in the state capitals, and I think that's there's still a lot of power in the states in the structure of our Constitution that has gone underutilized. But if we ever had state legislatures willing to really wield the constitutional power of like the 10th Amendment and nullify a lot of these federal, it would be in a very difficult place to stop us.
I'm glad that Maine's turned around. My understanding of what's been going on up there is through a different lens right now. So I mean, a past lens, that is, because I'm friends with and have had on the people who shut down Elon School. I'm sure you're familiar with Elon School.
Yes, somewhat.
Okay, yeah, you know, Joe Ritchie was a guy who he ran for Congress too. He ran for Senate too, way back in the day as a Democrat. But he was the one who put that school together. It was a troubled teen industry school, but really this abuse was going on there. There was a lot of terrible things that went on there. I had Mark Babbitts, and he was one of the key people in getting that school finally shut down after 30 years of just basically abusing troubled teens and getting paid $50,000 a year per student to do it, and having the state cover for them and so on. So it's great to see that things are turning around there, because I know that kind of stuff won't be allowed now.
Well, sadly, the Democrats are still running the show up in Maine right now. I mean, we've been a purple state lately and things, you know, for the 8 years, like following the launch of the Tea Party and all that. But Democrats have wrested control away. So Republicans are in the minority right now. But what's interesting is that it's a minority that is increasingly among the legislators, particularly in the House of Representatives, right? We have a lot more liberty people in the House there, and we're states across the country. So, like I said before, where we only got 1 out of 35 votes for Defend the Guard in the Maine Senate, we got a full third of the House of Representatives to vote for Defend the Guard, which is, when you think about a pretty radical piece of legislation saying we're bringing our troops home from these wars. And that's the influence of these liberty legislators that are now scattered throughout the Republican caucus, and they've become thought leaders within these caucuses. Because I mean, that's where the openings are, right? That's where the establishment's guard is down. It's these state legislative races. There's a lot of power there if we take them, and we just got to get people to run and knock doors and talk to voters, and don't be what's the stereotype of the autistic libertarian? Like, don't go knocking doors and like talking to people about like how the number one issue is we've got to abolish the Federal Reserve. Though these days with inflation the way it is, maybe that's not. I've actually found people are more receptive to that than ever. But
Yeah,
but like
more
we
these
gotta,
days than in the past.
but we tell politics, right? People care about the potholes in the road. Like, you gotta talk to people where they are. We gotta run candidates who are principled and understand liberty. We'll go to the mat for it, but also know how to, have a positive charisma score.
Well, and I think, one thing Ron Paul really instilled that I can remember throughout the process, 2008 through 2012, was exactly that. We need to focus on the federal level for sure, but all these other levels are very important. And, we know that we have like a Ron Paul person as the GOP chairman out in Colorado. There was a whole push, I believe, around 2010 to 2012 for Liberty sheriffs.
Oh yeah.
The Oklahoma party, chicken states in the country. The Oklahoma party chairman is now a Ron Paul guy who's also a state senator. Like it's the revolution that is not being televised because it's not happening like where all the cameras are focused in Washington, D.C. It's a silent revolution that is taking place cycle after cycle. Slowly, we are building of liberty people in state legislatures and through the state structures of the Republican Party. In Congress, we got Thomas Massey and Rand Paul, and they're great. But it is sad that they're kind of standing alone. Actually, I should say we did actually just get a guy, Eric Burleson, who is a liberty was a liberty legislator who passed constitutional carry there. A Ron Paul guy. He just got elected to Congress, so he'll be interesting to watch too. So as we get all these state legislators elected, inevitably some of them are going to start to trickle up more and more to the federal level. But of course, still the states are, where I think the fight really is. It's a side benefit if we get it.
Eric, do you have a YouTube page? Do you put up videos and all that stuff, or do you have something my mods can put out there?
You can go to my Twitter page at Senator Brakey. I've got some of my floor speeches. I gave a floor speech on like Ukraine recently that got like 1 million views or something. People were sharing it around quite a bit. But yeah, I would check me out on Twitter. I need to actually get up. I was thinking about going to what's the new one? Rumble. Creating a Rumble channel or like a central place.
Well, you're live on Rumble now. We're broadcasting on Rumble as well. So
all right. Well,
I apologize. I guess etiquette wise, I should be calling you Senator. I apologize. I just never been a senator before. So
I don't care about that. You can call me Eric. We're all a bunch of Paul bots. It's okay.
Yes. Yes.
When was the first time you heard about Ron Paul, Senator?
Well, I heard about him in the 2008 campaign, but I was still kind of living in the Matrix back then. And, I believed what Bill O'Reilly told me because I was in 2008. Yeah, I was in college. Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity told me that Ron Paul was a kook, and that I think that year like the spectrum was like the establishment wants John McCain, but if you're a real conservative, you want Mitt Romney, and if you're really a radical, you want. And that was like the spectrum that conservatives were allowed to exist in. this illusion of choice. Of course, you look at like what is the difference between Mike Huckabee and John McCain and Mitt Romney? They're just different flavors of the exact same thing, right? But of course, that's the point. It's a controlled illusion of choice. Make you feel like at the whichever establishment crony has been like put forward that it's someone the people chose, right? But where it's choosing within a very limited, scope of acceptable choices. So I thought Ron was a kook. It was I had an older brother, thankfully, who like gave me his book and like pushed the revolution and manifesto on me, and it got me thinking. Happened, and I started realizing how Ron Paul wasn't just right about everything except for the foreign policy, right? At a certain point, and that's I think for so many who kind of grew up in that era of neoconservatism, that was the hardest thing to admit because we were so emotionally invested in these terrible wars in Iraq, and we had cheerleaded for them, and to like to admit to yourself that you were wrong and like a million, like close to 1 million people across the Middle East are dead because of something that you cheerleaded and like went along for, like that's hard. That's hard to admit to yourself, but eventually I had to, and I just jumped in. I said, okay, what can I do to help this guy? Like, I was working after college. I was working as a professional actor in New York City, and I got involved with kind of grassroots Ron Paul movement there. Met some really cool people, including Michael Moresco. I don't know if you know him, the Liberty Rider.
Yeah, I know Michael Moresco.
Yeah, awesome dude.
Yeah, I've worked with him. He helped with Paul Festival. I believe I met him first at the Revolution March, but he was helping with Paul Festival in 2012 when we did that down in Tampa. Yeah, Michael's a good guy.
He's been such a mentor to me over the years, and he's just like, the embodiment of aloha. Just like. I guess he was living in Hawaii when Ron Paul cared his apathy, and then he got a bicycle and biked across America talking about Ron Paul,
Yeah. And then remember the Ron Paul blimp? Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. In some sense, it was like from a like camp. If you're just like a campaign consultant, you look at that and you think what a waste of money. We could have bought so many TV ads with that money on the blimp. But of course, like, who remembers the TV ads? Like 10 years later, or well, a decade and a half later, we remember the blimp.
Yeah, because a great Senator, or Eric, I'm trying to figure out what to do right. But here's you did a great lead in for this right here. I'm pulling up my old Ron Paul videos from way back. So I have a bunch on my hard drive. We kind of been watching this a little bit as we go along. But here's one that I thought was really good. It used to be on my old channel.
A question for you. Do you recognize this guy? He may be the best kept secret in the race for president.
I'm Ron Paul. I'm a congressman from Texas, serving in my 10th term. I am the champion of the Constitution.
You voted against the war. Why are all your fellow Republicans up here wrong?
You get the sense that the country is desperate for someone to show us the way. Not the old way, not the same way, but a new way.
But after I saw you in the debate, I said, you know what, this is a person who I really want to talk to a lot more.
We should come home. It was a mistake to go, so it's a mistake to stay. Weapons weren't there, and we went in under UN resolutions, and our national security was not threatened. We're more threatened now by staying.
You just never heard this logic from someone who's actually going to run the country.
Got Ben Affleck here. They're screaming for Ron Paul. Ron Paul, who has a huge internet following. He's a congressman.
Who are the true patriots? Those who conform or those who protest against wars without purpose?
A physician who's delivered more than 4,000 babies. Ron Paul has been married to the same woman for 50 years, which means he doesn't come to the race with a lot of the assorted baggage that some of the other candidates for the White House do. Ron Paul, who raised more than $5 million in the third quarter.
$4.3 million raised online in a 24-hour period.
Yesterday, for the Ron Paul campaign was the largest primary fundraising day in the history of political campaigns.
Do you know that we raised $4.3 million in one day without spending 1 cent? We didn't even pay an individual to go out, and they weren't professional fundraisers. It came in here. It was automatic. We're struggling to figure out how to spend the money.
Paul surprised the political world today. His campaign announcing he'd raised $5 million in the past 3 months. That's more money than some candidates who've received much more notice.
The Ron Paul people are all over the country. They are.
So here's the question. Should more people be listening to what Ron Paul has to say?
You appear to have consistent, principled integrity. Americans don't usually go for that.
You voted against the Patriot Act. I did. You voted against the Iraq War. Yeah. Warrantless searches. We've lost habeas corpus. We've had secret prisons around the world, and we have torture going on. That's un-American. The issue is who regulates us. That's the only issue. It's not whether we endorse bad habits or good habits. We endorse freedom.
Free bananas.
A lot of times I'm asked now, where are you getting the support? How come you're doing so well on the internet? What's going on around here? And I said, well, it just might be that freedom is popular.
Brings back memories, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Hard to imagine the days when $4.3 million was still a lot of money.
From themselves. It's just impossible. Otherwise, they become a tyrannical state.
I clicked the wrong thing.
A humble foreign policy, no nation building, don't police the world. That is a conservative, it's a Republican, it's a pro-American, it follows the founding fathers, and besides, it follows the Constitution. The people in this country like a strong president. And I got to thinking, well, how can I run for an office like this and say, I want to be a weak president? But you know what? The answer to that is we should have a strong president. Strong enough to resist the temptation of taking power that a president shouldn't have. I don't want to run the world. I don't know how to run the world. The Constitution doesn't give me the authority to run the world. We ought to mind our own business. We cannot force our freedom principles on anybody around the world. It just doesn't work. The message is powerful. I have my shortcomings, but the message has no shortcomings. The message of liberty is what America is all about. And the more people hear about this, and the more they understand, all of a sudden this has gotten so popular.
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
This made me think how Fox News was really trying to in 2012, because he, between 2008 and 2012, he was really setting the stage to get people involved in the delegate process. Mm-hmm. And so he was doing really well in the primaries in 2012. And you remember when Jon Stewart had to do that segment because Fox News was running the thing, and they would say, like, this person is number 1 and this person is number 3, and they would skip number 2 because of Ron Paul. And Jon Stewart's like, number 3 behind who? Behind who? Jon Stewart, all enraged about it. That was great.
Yeah, that was from the Iowa straw poll where Ron came in second to Bachmann by 4 votes or something. So narrow. But
what's his name standing there, and he's like, we're here, we got the Ron Paul bus behind us, but we're not here to talk about Ron Paul, we're talking about Sarah Palin. It was just like, oh my God, Bachmann, you are horrible.
I mean, talk about it's like, I don't know, it's just like people who enjoy sniffing their own farts too much, right? They it's like they're so high on their own supply, they don't realize just how ridiculous they sound. It's like, why are you ignoring this guy? They're just in this corporate echo chamber where anyone who's off of the 3x5 card of allowable public opinion, you don't have to talk about, even if they are getting massive support. It is interesting to see like Vivek Ramaswamy like position himself in that category. I'm not saying he's, I don't mean to compare him to Ron Paul. He's an interesting candidate, but no one's ever going to be the next Ron Paul. There's only one of him. Kind of interesting, kind of the different. I don't know. To see how kind of media coverage plays out on that, all these years later.
It will be. Yeah, definitely. It's a very interesting thing. We can get into talking about that somewhat. I guess we could get into talking about that. The candidates that are running now, like Vivek, he's saying he's got the right idea. He seems a little green to me, like green. I feel like he needs to do some work first, like be part of it, and establish himself more than just coming in and saying, okay, I want to be president, right? Like join the team first. You seem to have a lot of what it takes, but you just need a little bit more seasoning on you. But I like him being in the debates, at least to play that role, right? To be the one to be in there and shake things up.
Well, they're already trashing him about 9/11 and his comments about 9/11. So they're already trying to find ways to trash him and make him look, bad in some way.
I don't know if I assume you guys have heard that and forth with. It was the woman from CNN, the same woman who like did the town hall with Donald Trump, and it was just like, I don't know, just like screams hack with every question that she asks. But yeah, it's like so clearly taking him out of context. Anyway.
Yeah.
The media is still going to media, but what's encouraging is that they don't have nearly the power that they had back in 2012. Because we do have the realm of podcasts and the realm of alternative media. And now, Joe Rogan has more people who watch and listen to him than CNN. And Joe Rogan, was a Ron Paul supporter. It's Ron, kind of the present moment where we are in that reshaping kind of media environment. It's hard to quantify.
Well, I think you can relate to it, Senator, as people get tired of being told what to think, how they should think. Like you want to think for yourself. As you said, you had Sean Hannity and them telling you that Ron Paul was this quack, this kook of a guy. And I think, I dealt with that going through the Republican Party and being a George Bush supporter his first election. And, it's the number one thing. Like, I don't like news trying to tell me how to think. And so Joe Rogan and them, I think, became popular because you just got to listen to them. You got to listen to different ideas, and they weren't afraid to bring people on with a different idea or a different talking point than what you had. And so therefore you got to hear it and then decide for yourself. And so, it's great that the mainstream media is having this big fall because of the internet and because of all these podcasting. And I think, the more people start thinking for themselves, the more that benefits the freedom movement.
Yeah. It certainly, it destabilizes much of the centralized power structure, right? If they can't control the narrative, then they don't control the people.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Do you feel, as you're part of the Republican Party in the state Senate, and we've talked about liberty candidates really throughout the country, kind of infiltrating all these different levels, is the party feeling it? Do they acknowledge it? Do they know that this is happening, or are they still cocky, running around like they can get their way and do what they want? And on both sides, the Democrat and the Republicans. I mean, I don't know if the Democrat Party is being infiltrated as much as the Republican Party. I think most libertarians run over to the Republican Party to infiltrate it, so to speak. But is the party feeling it?
Well, I can't say, I can't speak for like every single state, or well, I mean, what I can say is like in 2012 in Maine, like we literally took over the state Republican Party at our convention, right? We elected majorities to our state committee. Like we elected Ron Paul supporting Republican National Committee people. In fact, the woman we elected, Republican National Committee woman, is the one who sent me the link for this thing. But so we've had a very clear, visible impact, and we don't control the party in the same way that we did before, but we are a very we're very established now wing of the main Republican Party, right? And people know, they don't agree with these libertarians on, marijuana policy, which we've done a lot to advance kind of medical and adult use cannabis in the state. But when it comes to things like fights like constitutional carry, they're leading the charge and taking these tough fights that other politicians are afraid to do. So at least in Maine, the Liberty wing of our party, I think, has become pretty much a fixture over the last 10 years. Other states, I hear different things, but I will tell you what's happening in terms of getting folks elected in the various states. Some states you have more New Hampshire, they have the Liberty Republicans are the majority of the majority Republican caucus there. New Hampshire's its own thing because of the Free State Project, but
right.
I think the party at least where I see it has to increasingly grab this is going to be a continuous permanent presence, and we need to work with them or continue fighting them. But we have to acknowledge that they're there. But I do think there's to some degree on the federal level, I know that Kevin McCarthy was threatened by these Liberty candidates running for Congress the last cycle because they came in and carpet bombed our races with millions of dollars to stop us from winning our primaries. I think they're starting to feel the threat. I think they felt even a single like Justin Amash or Thomas Massey has really made their lives difficult at times. And so, they certainly know that we exist, and they're the rural level they feel threatened.
Good. I hope so. That's all I can say. And we were mentioning it. There was a push for Liberty sheriffs. I think that went well for. Probably still is going pretty good. I don't know. I haven't heard much on it, but talking to GOP people in other states at the local levels and libertarians, there seems to be a lot of good happening there. Mayor level, school board level, a lot of the level where the voters tend to not put as much stock into, which it's still a great place to start to help spread the freedom and the message of liberty.
Yeah. If anyone out there is listening would ever think about running, start local. The biggest mistake I see is when people say, I'm going to get involved and I'm going to run for Congress. It's run for your local select board or your local city council or your local state representative. That's where it starts. And if that's all you ever do, that's going to be, that's enough, because ultimately, we have people who really care, and we just need to turn them on and mobilize people by the thousands to run for office.
And I think that was Ron Paul's message: just get involved, get out there and get involved. I think that was his biggest message throughout all of that.
Yeah, be part of the solution.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, speaking of some of the 30 tricks they used to pull, you guys remember Adam Kokesh?
Yep, I do remember that. I was wondering when he was going to come up.
Right? Yeah, he was a big advocate. He was talking here about how they used to screw the polls in the primaries.
All right. So yesterday we had our debate wrap up, and the general consensus seems to be that things went all right for Ron Paul, and he was treated fairly. But sadly, CNN appears to be afraid of using its own polls for its own post-game analysis. When reporting post-debate, they instead used data from a National Journal poll given to political insiders. Data taken from 5 other major poll sources post-debate showed Dr. Paul at 31.07% at Fox News, 83% at CNBC, 87% at WePolls.com. Vortex effect might have been a little biased there with the audience, 93.31%. But even at CNN's own poll, 78%. Okay, so let's be fair. The online polls can be skewed like any other form of polling, but here's the skewing that CNN came up with. There you go. Romney at 51%, down to Paul at 0. How did they get away with this? They didn't invent the numbers, as they might as well have. Instead, they reported on a National Journal online poll that had all of 54 votes. And according to the Baltimore Sun, it was reported that Ron Paul clearly won audience favor in New Hampshire. An analysis of audience reaction shows Paul was applauded twice as much as any other candidate on stage. Throughout the 2-hour debate, Paul was applauded 11 times. Romney, Bachmann, and former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty were each applauded 5 times. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich and businessman Herman Cain were each applauded 4 times. Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum was applauded the least amount of times, 3. Again, 0%. Really? CNN? Well, hey, maybe this can justify a CNN shutout of Ron Paul for the next go-round. Clearly, since 2-term governors who leave their states with billion-dollar surpluses, Gary Johnson of New Mexico, don't qualify as viable debate participants, Ron should be silenced too, right? Yes, America, you see how this works? 54 votes to determine the front-runners. This is how they are selective in the narrative of the Communist News Network, ably coming to the aid of their lovable, freedom-hating, big government Republican Mitt Romney. This is why we at RT America probably need to host our own GOP presidential.
You know, it's funny. It goes back to what I was talking about, where the news wants to tell you how to think. I mean, you can watch the debates and don't have to see a poll to see who won. You can tell who won the debates and who got the most cheers by just watching it. So for them to come out and then do that with the polls is just, again, them telling you how to think. Interesting with Adam Kokesh, when we did the Revolution March in 2008, everything was running behind schedule, as it does with a rally like that. And Kokesh was supposed to speak, but Ron Paul had arrived, and it was a very hot day. It was July 12th, and it was just brutal out there in Washington, and everybody was uncomfortable. And Ron Paul wanted to go on stage and was pretty much like, I need to get on stage or I need to leave. And we were about to cancel Adam's speech, and Adam said, because we had a couple other speakers who went over their time, we had everybody limited to a certain amount of time, and some of the speakers just kind of kept going, and we didn't have anything in place to really stop them. We weren't prepared for that first rally we ever put on. And so Adam came up there and he said, look, I'll be fast. I was scheduled, I think, for like 12 minutes or 15 minutes. He goes, I'll get it done in 8 minutes. And, everybody looked at me because nobody wanted to make the decision to tell Ron Paul, like, no, we're going to let one of our speakers go first. And I finally just said, hey, we said he could speak, and if he can do it in 8 minutes, let's let him up there. And so he went up there and delivered his speech. And it was one of the best speeches that of that day, aside from Ron Paul's, obviously. But because he at that time was speaking about the Iraq war and the atrocities there and against the war, the speech was just wonderful, and the crowd just really erupted with his speech. So a little bit of Adam Kokesh there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You remember when he did the dance on the monument?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my group was called the Ron Party, right? And so we had a Facebook group and we had a YouTube channel, and we would use to propagate. We'd just be dropping links and educating people like day in and day out. That's what we did. We get out in front of the problems. We saw problems coming from Ron Paul. We get out in front of them and kind of head them off, get all the debunking ready to go. And we just, as soon as it would hit, we'd boom, 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 find the news links, add the comments. And, the candidates, whichever candidate they were getting ready to prop up in front of them, whether it be Santorum or whichever one it was, we had just fact sheets on them ready to go, boom, and meme form, like put out in as an image, right? So we used the Ron Party YouTube page as kind of aggregate, and didn't even think much about it as even being a YouTube channel. Honestly, I didn't. But I had it was like 14K subscribers on that thing, and his video, the one of him going to the Capitol and dancing, is the one that really set that channel off, because I did a video on it, right? And then it got picked up by InfoWars and put on the front page. And at the time, InfoWars was hitting. So all of a sudden, it started jumping. I was like, what in the heck's going on here, man? I didn't even know it had been picked up. I had to go figure out what happened. I was like, why is this video exploding? Where am I getting all these subscribers from? It was nuts.
The Ron Paul forums. That was another thing I forgot. I was thinking about that too. The Ron Paul forums back then. And we used them a lot to communicate about everything happening with Ron Paul and Ron Paul events and Ron Paul speeches. Everybody knew where he was giving a speech and when.
Yep.
You always went to the Ron Paul forums to find out how that was, and then you'd see the videos, people who were able to back then, because not everybody was carrying the phones that could do videos back then. But yeah, you see the YouTube crowd, the videos come out, and the crowd that just would show up for his rallies. And then, those same people would go over to like a Mitt Romney rally or somebody like that and show what they're getting. And it was just pathetic. I mean, the comparison there was no comparison. You'd have like 100 or so, maybe at McCain or Romney's, and thousands at Ron Paul. And sometimes they would have to get a different venue. They'd book one venue and there was too many people there, so they'd have to switch it to a bigger venue for Ron Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was that was the beginning of it. And I saw a comment about Bernie Sanders. I'm not sure the context of it was. It was that I was going to say that reminded me that it was the Ron Paul grassroots movement that inspired all the Bernie Sanders movement to kind of happen. Like those guys had to sit there and listen to us for 2 terms run doing the Paul bot stuff, like educating, putting stuff out daily, really pushing the points home. My group was about being that kind of like online elite group that would do the work, right? We kind of showed up and we're like, we're going to get ahead of this. We're going to pay attention. We were promoting Ron Paul and de-promoting, I guess, or just at least put the truth out about the other candidates before Ron Paul even decided he was running. Like, we just knew he was going to run. We just did it, got out in front of it, because we knew it would take that much time to get everybody convinced to even think about voting Republican. A lot of people, right? Because a lot of people still had that false left-right paradigm in their mind. So it was a lot of that, and it was a lot of explaining like how these can be different and really getting the name out there and showing what a really nice, honest person he is, anti-war, things like that, really start resonating with people. And we were able to convince a good number of people to at least vote for him in the primaries, that were going to vote Democrat as a move against the establishment, as a stand up to the neocons, right? That was effective in that way. But first you had to convince them that there was actually another kind of Republican. Like, they were still had the George Bush kind of white collar billionaire support, doesn't like the poor, just wants to go to war mentality about the Republican Party. They didn't think anything different. They thought that's just what a Republican is. That's how bad it had gotten in terms of perception from the 70s to present at that time, right? It was this long incursion of neocons and rhinos coming into the party that were mingling with and coordinating with, or at least collaborating with the Democrats, right? And continuing this more establishment party agenda than a true Republican agenda, or one that's really just an American agenda, for lack of a better word. People just couldn't see it. I mean, you go through college, you go through school, the television, everything kind of points you to this WWE face heel kind of thing. And so a lot of people come out and they think they got politics figured out, and they never look back. They're like, I'll never vote for a Republican. I heard that so many times. It's like, even an honest one that wants to end wars. Yes. Wow.
Yeah, it was hard, when we did the radio shows and podcasts and the primaries were going on, a lot of states don't let you vote unless you're registered for that party. So you can't vote in that. Some states aren't like that, but a lot, you can't vote for that party's primaries unless you're registered for that party. And I remember we had a listing, I believe it was during when we had Revolution Broadcasting, and might have switched over to Restore the Republic, but it was basically a listing of states where you were allowed to vote, whether you're Republican or not, or whether you had to be a Republican. And it was hard to convince people. People didn't want to switch over and put that R next to their name. They were like, look, we love Ron Paul. We want to see him win, but there's no way that we're changing our voting registration where an R is next to our name. They just had too much pride to do that. So there was a lot of these states where people who were libertarian, registered as a libertarian or registered as an independent or even a Democrat, refused to switch over and put that R next to their name. And so that was another, I don't know, obstacle that was in the way there when trying to get the message out and help Ron Paul win. But when Ron Paul really first came on the scene in 2008, a lot of stuff was done through conference calls. And that's actually how we got the Revolution March started. We were on a conference call and we were waiting for Ron Paul to come on. I think there was about 2,500 people on this conference call. And the guy I was organizing it with Ray, there was just this long pause. They were like, okay, Ron Paul will be coming on. And then there was this long pause, and Ray just goes, revolutionmarch.com, and then announces like another detail about it. And the hits to the website went from like 0 to like thousands in a minute. It was amazing. But I remember back then just doing all the conference calls, getting on conference calls. So Ron Paul would talk. He'd talk about what was going on in the campaign, where they were at with stuff with the campaign. So, it's interesting to think about that because of where things were at in 2012 with the internet.
Mm.
Did I lose you guys?
No, there you go.
Okay.
There you are.
Oh, okay. Thought I lost everybody there. So
I was looking at some stuff here in the background as well. So are you there, Senator? I think I can hear him as well. I'm trying to check on his audio.
Yeah, I haven't heard him in a while, so I wasn't sure.
Are you still there, Senator?
I see his picture.
Yeah. Yeah, we're having trouble with your audio. You might want to check your Bluetooth. It sounded like it was breaking up a little bit there at the end. But we'll let him get his audio straight here.
Yeah. So a lot of interesting, with Adam Kakash, there was different phases during the Paul Festival. He wasn't in favor with the campaign anymore. In fact, they were having their own rally down there in Tampa during our festival, and they actually had like wanted signs, like old school, like old Western type, like wanted signs put up around the Paul to basically not let Adam Kakash in the rally at all. He wasn't allowed there I think he was criticizing Jesse Benton, which was rightfully so at the time. But yeah, it very interesting how things changed from 2008 to 2012.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they use that strategy. They run out a bunch of people. They run over the time. They use the media to skew the polls and to stack up their guys one by one. Meanwhile, they're kind of hiding the real guy kind of in the back. Like Romney was a perfect example when they did that against Ron Paul. They use all these other people to go out in front of him and just have him lingering in the background. And the plan was for him just to shoot past, right? And then and that way, that was their little trick then, right? And that was our trick in the media. I still felt like we were overcoming it in the grassroots, but maybe that might have just been my perception because I was just so in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I thought, I think that there was still a lot of trickery that went on to manipulate the vote, and somehow I think Ron Paul won a lot of places that they say he didn't.
Yeah, I think everybody felt that way. Without a doubt that we thought for sure if it was a legitimate actual primary, then there was no doubt that he won. But they were going to have to manipulate it, cheat, lie, steal, one of those, all of those, whatever, to make sure that Ron Paul didn't get it. And it wasn't so unexpected. It wasn't like we were shocked when it happened. We were like, oh my God, they gave it to this guy. I believe it was Romney. It wasn't that shocking to us, but it was definitely a blow. Obviously you were there, everybody was there for that. And, there was a lot of work put in to get Ron Paul to where he was in that primary. People get involved with the delegates. As I told you off the air, Dr. Steve was running around teaching people about the Roberts Rule of Order and how to properly do things in those type of meetings. There's a lot of people educating on the delegate process, how to become a delegate, what happens when you become a delegate, things like that. And throughout everywhere, we heard, we had the Revolution broadcasting, the Restore the Republic radio. People were coming on from states everywhere saying, we've got this many delegates for Ron Paul in there now. We're the majority. We're going to win this state, no problem. And then, of course, it would come out and Ron Paul wasn't number one mysteriously. It was like, and we didn't think that the delegates were lying. You could tell by, the vetting process, the answers to their questions, their passion, that they were for it and that they were Ron Paul people. It's just that the Republican Party is a private party and they can change the rules whenever they want.
And they did, and they can
Yeah,
lock people out, and they can ignore their own rules too when they want to. Evidently,
Yeah.
that's why it's so important that we. Oh yeah, you're just a little low. Let me see if I can turn you up. Here, let's try to turn you. There you go. Try it again.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Much better.
Okay. I was gonna say to what you know, one, it was very revealing, that moment at the 2012 National Convention where you have John Boehner. It's a question of the rule changes that they're pushing through to basically strip away power, like a repeat performance of what Ron Paul has pulled off that year, and also Central's report that kicked Ron Paul delegates out of the convention. And when he's like taking the yays and the nays on those votes, and these are voice votes happening on the floor, and it sounds like actually pretty close on both reports. Like the yays are loud, the nays are loud, and yet John Boehner's reading a teleprompter that says the ayes have it. It's like the illusion of an actual a parliamentary process. You know, we're having motions, we're doing this, but the script says which side wins. You know, it was really, you know, pulling back the curtain and seeing
yeah, you were saying that the parliamentary procedures, I remember that, and everybody learning about them, and just as time that you would do something based on the parliamentary procedures, somebody at the Republican Party would pull the string and be like, nope, meeting's over. Or I know delegates were told meeting was at one time and place if they knew it was Ron Paul delegates, and then they would actually have the meeting at a different time and place altogether.
Yeah, a lot of dirty business going on, man. A lot of dirty business, and we were watching all of it. So if you were in the Ron Paul revolution back then, you were learning a lot. Like I think every run we learned some new stuff that made us get better and better and better, and push the envelope further and further and further. But I know the goal always was to kick the neocons out of the right. You know, that was the number one thing. That we needed to do to have legitimacy, to have true, have a real choice again, and kind of open up that part of the government again. But this is what I'm worried about with 2024. Like I know people are going back and forth, Trump, not Trump, maybe this guy, maybe DeSantis, maybe Vivek, maybe somebody else, maybe RFK or somebody. Right? I've heard all these names thrown out there as people that might consider voting for them. But I know one thing: Trump means the neocons aren't in charge of the GOP again for at least another 4 years. You know, and that's a safety net we need. That's a foothold I don't think we can afford to lose. What do you think, Senator?
Yeah, I'm very open to that. I mean, I don't know. As I'm looking at the whole race, all I know is that my litmus test is anyone who's like World War III is off is not a choice for me. So it's like the only people like I feel like are even worthy of consideration are Trump, Ramaswamy, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You know, if so, but I think that your point is very well taken about Trump. Trump is not one of us, right? He's not a libertarian. He's not a Ron Pauler. But he did dethrone the neocons.
Yes.
And I think that this is, you know, I was working as the national spokesperson for Young Americans for Liberty for a while, and that gave me an opportunity to really kind of connect younger libertarian, the younger people in the movement, a lot of the Gen Z folks in the movement. And what's interesting for them is they've really came of political age like in an era where they don't remember when the neocons were on top. Right. So like I'll meet libertarians and say, yeah, I don't agree with the neocons, but like I don't agree with like the MAGA movement either. And well, I'd rather partner with the neocons than with the MAGA movement, right? Because they don't like there's things to object to about the MAGA movement. That's fair, but they just don't understand how bad it was when the neocons were in control. They don't understand how many millions of people across the world are dead because the neocons were in control. They don't understand civil liberties we lost, the Patriot Act, all of these things they grew up with as just background that were already in place. So it's like, yeah, Trump is, you know, Trump's certainly not a gold standard we should measure ourselves against and say this is the ideal president. It's not. But yeah, occupying the space, keep the neocons from reclaiming the Republican Party. I think that's a very sound argument for deciding to support Donald Trump as a Ron Paul libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I've learned though through the Ron Paul experience, right? Is that I termed it philosopher king. Ron Paul is like a philosopher king, and he's a perfect president when a system is working. Bring that guy in, honest leadership. He's going to toe the line. He's going to be right down the Constitution. He's going to pick the right things first. He's going to have integrity. He's not going to be bought out. We can always trust him, right? But when you have an entire corrupt system around somebody like that, that's not a lot they can do, right? And it's not even a good use of their time. It's like, you just get like ramsacked with all this, controversy and accusations and tie you up and vote you out. And it's just all these things try to impeach you over and over again about stupid stuff. Right. And we know that's what's going to happen because Trump just showed us. Trump just took the hit. He plowed through and did something nobody else could do. And that was win the presidency as a outsider, right? As an anti-establishment.
Yeah.
That's really where I put him as anti-establishment, right? I'd like to think that he can come around to the philosophy of liberty and that the more that he fights these guys, the more he realizes that that's where it is, right? That's where he needs to be. But we need a bull in a china shop. We need someone to get in there who could actually go blow for blow with these guys, has enough money and resources to protect himself and keep himself out there, pushing as hard as they can push, right? Taking all the hits that they're throwing and be able to keep standing up and getting stuff done. And like removing their policies, the things that enable their corruption, their mechanisms, their institutions, things of that nature that enable their power. And then that would clear the way for like a Ron Paul. That's the way I see it. That's why I would have ran to get involved and be like his VP. I'd love to see Rand Paul be Trump's VP and get groomed for that next step and be president.
Well, yeah, I mean, Pence was Trump's thing, but I never been the biggest Trump fan, but the one thing I loved, aside from the fact that you're right, he kind of beat the neocons there and took that out. That was great. I loved the press conferences. That's the one thing I missed the most. No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk to you. You're fake news. Oh no, I'm sorry, you're fake news. I don't want to talk to you.
Well, that felt so good. Yeah,
I love those. Those were my favorite to sit and watch.
Instead, we only have press conferences where we only hear from the fake news. Because all the questions are scripted and the answers are scripted and all the real news is never called on.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting. I wish Rand Paul definitely would have been his VP or would be his VP if he does get the nomination again. When Trump got the nomination the first time and then he named Pence, I put my head down. I was like, come on. For somebody who wants to drain the swamp, you could have done better than that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be. Really I think. I'm not saying this is the most likely outcome, but I'd be willing. I'd be open to betting some money on Ramaswamy becoming the VP. I think what we saw in the presidential debate the last night of him basically being like the only kind of MAGA, kind of America First person who's kind of bringing some new energy, and all these other people, like he's the only person running in that race there who's not. Something that Donald Trump is going to see as an act of betrayal. And he's making a name for himself. And Rand, I mean, boy, if he picked Rand for VP, that'd be awesome. But I also wonder if losing Rand in the Senate, what a blow that would be. But whether Rand is VP or in the Senate or in what was very interesting to see was as Trump progressed through his first term, how much closer Rand seemed to seemed to get together on these golfing trips, where Rand became like the Trump whisperer. Why did Donald Trump walk away from the war that was all set up and ready to go for Iran? They were ready to launch a war and basically walked up to the line and then turned away and walked back. And that's why John Bolton left the administration and all these people, because he wouldn't go to war with Iran. Why was that? Like, I can't help but think that it has something to do with the fact that like Rand Paul was right there, and Tucker Carlson is on TV. It's like Rand Paul and Tucker Carlson, like both like working on like, you like, you know what this is gonna do. You know you're walking into a trap, and so I don't know. Well, that's one thing that does give me optimism if there were a second Trump term is that Rand seems to have some influence with him that grew over the course of his and with so many people having stabbed Trump in the back, the establishment people who were basically he allowed to be planted in his administration. I certainly hope that he has learned enough that he's not going to be bringing those kinds of people back again.
I agree.
Yeah, me too. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Gentlemen, I have to bow off at this point. It's been a great show, and I thank you for having me on, man. But it's getting past the time that I need to go help with the family. So again, I appreciate you having me on here, and the conversation was great. I love talking Ron Paul and the freedom movement, and I will gladly do it anytime. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Absolutely, and thank you for being
I've got
here. And everybody, make sure you subscribe to Liberty Unleashed. Please do that.
Yes, definitely head over there on YouTube. I'm also on Rumble, but on YouTube, I'm Liberty Unleashed TV. And if you guys from the past know Jordan Page and some of the others, I did a video of Jordan Page's Pendulum song. So you can find that over on my channel too. It's not just podcasting, but there's music videos as well. So come and check it out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do this again, and we'll get up with V Radio, man, and come over and hang out with you guys sometime.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I think we're on live tomorrow, but he had a tornado come through there, and I haven't heard from him yet. So I'm not sure if our normal Sunday evening show is on yet or not, but obviously we'll keep you posted and let you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks a lot for having me on. I really had it.
Thank you, sir.
It was nice talking to you and meeting you.
Good talking to you. I'm going to dash myself. It's getting pretty late where I am. So thank you for having me on as well. Good. What's that?
Good. I said, yeah, I'd like to reach out to you again and maybe have you back on. Thank you so much for being here. It was a wonderful surprise. I'm happy that you came by and popped in.
Yeah, sure. That's
Absolutely.
always fun to talk about the old days. Well, I guess you guys got my email address now, and you or anyone who's listening wants to, follow me on Twitter. I'm fairly, I guess it's not Twitter now, on the platform
X.
formerly known as Twitter, X. You can find me there at Senator Brakey, and that can be a good way too. If you ever want to chat again, you can send me a DM there. I might see that more likely than an email, to be honest.
Senator, before you go, I have one important thing to talk to you about. I put a link
Sure.
in the private chat. It's a little box right over there, private chat. It's a gifts and go to a person named Radix Verum, and she's a documentary maker and an activist that I recently had on. In fact, she was my on last Saturday night, and she's a good friend. She's the second time on the show. She's doing a documentary called, it's about the Fednapping hoax in Michigan with Whitmer. And it's an extremely extremely important documentary, trying to get that out there and so people know about it. But it's extremely, she's covering the trials right now too, by the way. You can go to her YouTube page called It's Radix Verum and see what it's all about. But I gave you the link so you could check out the documentary trailer and see what you thought about it. Definitely someone to this message and what it's talking about could have the same impact of like the Sound of Freedom, in a sense that waking people up about this issue of these manufactured crises that are steering people into making decisions, manufacturing consent, if you will, right? For more nonsense, really just like putting out the backing up the establishment narrative that there's this vast right-wing conspiracy, that there's these militia groups are out to do all this harm and whatnot, right? That they're actually funding and setting up these people, and that this has been going on for a very long time. So it's an important issue. It would be great if it got some traction and some attention and some help with her because she's been doing it all on her own. She's a mother. She's very concerned about this country. She's putting in the time. She's advocating for the victims of this hoax that are being imprisoned unfairly and treated like crap. Actually, like really just being treated terribly. And oops, I lost him. Well, I hope that I guess we lost his connection. I'm sure he'll come back. But yeah, I hope that he gets that and checks it out. And so anyways, yeah, the guys, wow, what an exciting evening. Sorry, there's some connection issues there. But what exciting evening, man. We had a great time tonight. Not usually how I end the show, but wow, that's cool. Okay, cool. Link in the chat. Cool. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so that's pretty awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here this evening. I don't have here he comes. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, I'm sorry. I was looking up the video. I was putting the link in, and I guess it kicked me out of the thing. So,
oh man,
I didn't want to be rude and just disappear, but it was actually me trying to check out the video that you guys are sending me.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, yeah, check it out. I mean, it's a really important issue and it needs to be brought to light because these manufactured crises steer people and they manufacture the narrative that people stick to so that they don't have their minds open. They can't see the truth. They won't go vote for, they won't even look into a Ron Paul, right? They won't even look into the philosophies of liberty. They just think that everybody on the right are these evil people. And they're using these kind of setups. And I'm sure you know all about these.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. For all the deep state talks about election interference, like that's exactly what that was in Michigan, right? It was to create an artificial narrative going into an election to swing it in the direction that they wanted, and to have all these people that they just kind of rope into it and trap them. So I'll definitely check out the documentary. I mean, it's in. Yeah, I'll
it's
check
still
it
in the
out.
works. So we're trying to get it out. We're trying to help her get the funding she needs to finish it, but also get the word out about it so maybe more people will get interested and want to get behind it. But yeah, a really important issue. And not only that, she's discovered that this was not just a one state thing. They tried to actually set this up in many states, and that the same person that was behind this was behind the J6 stuff. And so she connects all the dots. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Great. Yeah, I'd heard there was a connection there that the guy who orchestrated that in Michigan got promoted to something, with Jan 6. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what she has there. And if I get through it, I'll see if I can get posted something.
That'd be great, man. That'd be great. It would really be a huge help to get some eyes on this because it's really important work and she's doing a fantastic job. She's an amazing person too.
All right. Well, you talk her up very well. So
thank you, sir. Thank you. And thank you for being here tonight, man. It means a lot. And I'm happy that you stopped by and we met each other. Thank you for all your work you've done.
All right. Have a good night. Take care.
Take care. Bye. All right. Wow. Okay. So there we go. Good exit. We're all good. The man, that was fun. Woo. Awesome, dude. Awesome. Well, liberty brings people together, right? And what did you guys think, man? You guys were out there. I know we were kind of just talking our talk here, kind of just watching. What do you guys think of all that stuff? Thank you for being here, by the way. I know it's Saturday and it's busy and can be a lot of places, but you're here with me, and that's what matters. Thank you so much. Wow. Senator pops in out of nowhere. Cool. Well, I'm looking around for an outro song for tonight. So what do you guys think, man? Yeah. A good theme for tonight. Jeez, I thought I had one. Now we'll get something good on. Oh, yeah, man, that was wild. That was wild. So much more. We can do more of these, man, because there's always more to talk about in terms of the Ron Paul days and how they connect today and how important it is. But as you can see, we're all, 3 different Ron Paul people right there from different walks that we're all, we all kind of are aligned on what we're seeing and what we're talking about and how important it is to keep the neocons out of the right and keep them out of control of the right, and what it would mean if they were to get back in power in the right, what they would do to it. It's not good stuff. Not good stuff. Let's see, a bloat of government and maybe how it could be done. Yeah. Maybe we could leave me off point for a discussion on bloat of government versus debloating. Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I'll try to get him back on. I'll try to get the senator back on, and I'll have like a more prepared interview for him. Like why I actually think about the questions and we kind of have a flow. Tonight, I told Liberty, I was like, yeah, we're just going to dive into the Ron Paul days and we'll talk. It'll just go where it goes, right? It'll go into whatever directions it needs to go in. So we'll get there eventually. I had no worries about that. Let's see. Man. Right. Yeah. Then look up academic freedom. Yeah. Period. We have to get rid of them for sure. And that's what we're trying to do. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Just keeping them out of power does it generationally, wearing them out. I mean, they did the one thing I said, that if Ron Paul ever got the nomination, what would happen is that they would go running back to the left faster than you know what. And sure enough, when Trump did it, they did the same thing. So they made me right. I was like, as soon as the anti-establishment got a foothold in that GOP and took it, they would be right there to make sure they would go to the opposition and try to win that way, try to keep you out that way. Because see, if you keep you out, right, it's almost as good as beating you, keeping you. I mean, it beating you in the primaries, but I mean, of course, they can keep you out. And then they can, if you get in, they're going to try to make you ineffective, right? They're going to try to, eat up your time with conspiracies and, different kinds of things they've manufactured and fabricated just to eat up time and resources and eat up the news cycle. All right. This sounds good. We're good. I think I found one. Thank you guys for being here, man. Been a wild week. For me, at least. And good old okay, here we go. Queued up for the exit. All right, let's get ready. You guys ready to jam? Let's jam. Remember Trump's inaugural speech? All the swamp creatures had horrified looks on their faces. Yeah, they did. That's another good reason just to vote for Trump. It's because you just want to see the swamp creatures and everybody else melt down who just can't deal with it. Well, hey man, I'll be back next week with a whole new with a whole nother week of shows. Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Tech Reality Tuesdays. Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Unveiling Reality. We'll probably get back on the get back on the Galactic Federation light train, the UFO rabbit hole train this week. We'll see. And then Preparing History with Gary Lamb on Thursday nights. We'll have some great content for you that night. We're breaking ground there. It's content like you won't find anywhere else. Definitely come check that out. And then we'll back next Saturday for another Winning Saturday night, man. It'll all be there. Of course, the Win This Week short comes out, and I usually put the schedule on that. Usually comes out like Tuesday or Wednesday. Sometimes Monday. Depends. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for being here. And until next time, y'all, keep on winning. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. More
and feelings and seas come